All right. Well, we'll get rolling here. Imagining that some other folks might join us, but wanted to make full use of our time together. Good afternoon or evening or morning, wherever we find you today. My name is Joey Seltzer. I'm one of the Senior Associate Deans in the admission office at Bates, and also Bates graduate, class of 2003. When I was a student here, which was probably before a lot of you were born, but glory days, time for me to talk about them. I was a field hockey player and I ran track. So I'm very excited about today's conversation. It will make me nostalgic and remind me again that it was a lifetime ago that I was a Bates athlete. But luckily for you all, we have a couple of our coaches here, a couple of our student athletes to talk about their experiences. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. I also have one of my admission colleagues here with me today, and she's going to talk about what her role is in our conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Coach John Martin to start.
Thanks, Joey. My name is John Martin. I'm the head baseball coach here at Bates. I have just finished my 4th year at Bates. I've really had an amazing experience so far. I was fortunate enough when I got here to inherit a great team and a great group of individuals. And I'm excited to join everybody today, and I look forward to answering your questions. So nice to see everybody.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dani. I am the field hockey coach at Bates. I just finished my 7th season. It has truly flown by, and it's just an amazing college to work at. You have a great panel today, so I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say, and really appreciate you all taking the time to join us and learn more about Bates and our culture. And I'll pass it on to Christopher, who's a student athlete here.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Christopher. I am on the men's cross country and track and field teams. I'm a rising senior from Burlington, Vermont. And I'm a double major in physics and studio art. And outside of that, I also am involved in the Bates High Altitude Ballooning Club. Just launched some weather balloons, that's fun, and a few other activities. But I'm excited to answer all your questions today. So Aidan.
Hi, I'm Aidan. I'm also a rising senior. I'm one of the captains on the men's rowing team. I'm a politics and sociology double major. And also on campus, I also work in admissions, as well as I'm on one of the budget committees.
Thank you. So my name is Nicole. I'm here, as Joey mentioned, to provide some support in the background. So if everyone could just look at the bottom of your screen, you should see the Q&A button, and that's where you can submit questions directly to our panelists. So either I'll be handling those directly and either messaging you the answers there or passing it along to our panel to be asked throughout this hour. But feel free to shoot anything that comes to mind there, and I'll be there to answer it. Thank you for being here with us today.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So I have a couple of questions for our attendees, so the prospective students listening to us, just to get the ball rolling and get a sense of kind of where you are in the college search or in the recruiting process. All of you are Zoom experts at this point, so hopefully you know the functionality of kind of raising your hand at the bottom. So if you would digitally raise your hand if you have been in touch with a Bates coach already. Wow. Okay, great. Most of you have. So for the group as well, I'm assuming that means most of you are rising seniors, but if you are a rising senior in high school, please raise your hand. Great, awesome. That's really helpful. Okay. So that helps kind of direct our conversation a little bit, knowing that this is a pretty focused group. For those of you who aren't rising seniors or haven't been in touch with the Bates coach, this is still a great place to be, and we will answer your questions as well. But that's a really helpful starting off point for us. I have a few kind of introductory questions to ask our panelists, and then students, I'm hoping that you have questions as well. So again, Nicole is in the Q&A ready to answer anytime, so feel free to chat those in as soon as you think of them, but I will encourage those in a little bit as well. But before we dive into those, I'm just going to ask, we'll start with our student athletes at Bates. Our students are front and center always, and the reason that we're all here. So I'm going to ask Christopher and Aidan to talk a little bit about their prospective student athlete process, if sports were a part of their consideration of Bates, and why they chose Bates. So Christopher, do you want to start?
Yeah, totally. So in high school, I did cross country, Nordic skiing, and track, and I really didn't think that it would be a possibility for me to go on. I always kind of saw college athletics as this higher tier that I wasn't quite qualified for, and it wasn't until my sister, actually, who also went to Bates, looked into it, and she ended up running for all the same teams, and so that's what opened my eyes up first. And I mean, it's great that most of you have reached out so far. But yeah, that conversation wasn't started until, the fall of my senior year, when I reached out and actually did a visit to campus where I got to have a conversation with the coach. And I started reaching out to other coaches as well. And when I kind of went for those visits, I got to talk to them. But what stood out to me, at Bates, I was looking at Bates for a bunch of other reasons, but specifically the athletics, the staff was just so welcoming and made it sound like they really wanted, me, and that once they had me on their team, they were gonna, value and support me entirely. They made it clear that they weren't spending a bunch of time recruiting and reaching searching and trying to build up the team. They were focused on the team that they had, currently with them. And that's where they spent most of their time and resources. And then specifically for cross country, I mean, Maine is just such a beautiful place that I get to run. And we go to Pineland Farms, which is, 20-30 minutes away, beautiful trails, but also just in Lewiston. It's a great place to run down by the river trails. So I'm sure I'll get into some more depth about some of these things, but that's my first piece.
Yeah, I would say similar to Christopher, I didn't necessarily think I wanted to be on a team necessarily in college, and I was not necessarily part of my application to Bates. But kind of once I got into Bates, I was then in touch with one of the assistant coaches and the recruiter at the time, saying I was really interested in coxing for the following year. And then kind of my conversation with him really led into him discussing about all the different things that people on the team were involved in, how they really prioritized academics, and really found that balance between competing at a very high level and then also being students as well. So the student athlete part to me was really, really important, and ultimately why I chose to be on a team at Bates, because it allows me to compete at a very high level while still also prioritizing academics and then getting to do all sorts of other things like working in the office and doing a couple other things on campus too. So that was really, really important to me. So that's ultimately what led me to be on the rowing team.
Great, thank you both. And worth noting, and I'm going to make you guys brag about it eventually, is both of your teams have had tremendous success. So next time you talk, you need to talk about that. You need to brag a little bit. But I'm going to turn it to our coaches for a moment. I'm going to ask Coach Ryder if you want to talk a little bit about the recruitment process from your point of view, what those conversations are like, or what prospective students should expect maybe in the summertime leading up to their senior year.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So the recruitment process, I think, is really individualized at this point in the college search world, and it can vary greatly. So if for some reason you're not where I'm explaining or you haven't gone this far, don't hit the panic button. It's totally fine. I'm just going to go off of like generals here. But for the most part, our college search process starts in the sophomore year, and sophomore to junior year, I call that like the data collection phase, where it's really a ton of emails and phone calls, and maybe seeing you at an event, maybe seeing you on campus, but it's a time where we're trying to just take in and get as much information on you as possible and really get to know you as an individual. And that goes beyond just field hockey, it's really trying to get to know you as an individual, what you're passionate about. That's huge for me to find out what a prospect loves to do outside of sports, because it tells me a little bit about how you spend your time, and just a lot about you, really. And so it's finding out about your family, how you train, how you like to spend your free time. It's really that getting to know you phase. And as Joey said, that summer before your senior year, that's when, for us personally, it gets a lot more serious. By that point, we've usually narrowed down our list pretty significantly, and we have a good idea of who our top prospects are. And we're really at that point just trying to find out who's the best for Bates overall with admissions. We've already done our homework. We know you're a good field hockey player. We know you're a good academic fit. We know you're an awesome person. But at that point, we're just trying to kind of finalize who's going to rise to the top of our list. And it's a lot of emails, phone calls, just kind of continues throughout your whole recruiting process.
Thanks, Dani. And Coach Martin, maybe you want to talk a little bit about Bates specifically, because you've worked at a few institutions. Do you want to talk a little bit about fit and what you see or what you look for in prospective athletes for Bates?
Sure. So as Coach Ryder just mentioned, it's an ongoing process, and it's something that I think is a year-round cyclical kind of monster that we have to battle all year long. The beauty of being a coach in college is that we have the ability to recruit, and we're out there trying to attract certain student athletes that feel that Bates fits the profile of the college that they're looking for. So for me, when I'm speaking with recruits, I like to talk to them mostly about their college selection, because coaches are recruiting and prospective students are selecting, right? So recruiting is that we're bringing in more than one. A prospective student is looking to choose one. So they have to really narrow the list down to get to that one school that's a good fit. When keeping a good mindset here and trying not to get overwhelmed, especially with what's going on today with COVID and everything else, it's tough to visit. But I think you need to look at basically three things when you're choosing your college experience. And number one is going to be obviously an academic fit. Make sure that the school is has a variety of options for you. If you're looking obviously at a liberal arts education, Bates has so many options of areas of study and double majors and minors and so many different backgrounds there as far as the academic curriculum goes. So make sure it's a good fit academically. I'd say next, make sure that the campus culture, the size, the location is what you want. I think for Bates, it's a wonderful size. The campus is large enough to where you don't feel like you're seeing everybody all day, every day. We're cramped here. We have a lot of space, students spread out. It's right in a great college town in Lewiston. There's plenty of options for restaurants and things to do. And as Christopher mentioned earlier, Maine is a beautiful place to be with outdoor options and things, especially in the summer and the fall. So Bates was a great fit for me, looking for a location of a college to work in. And I would say the third item that you need to keep in mind is going to be obviously athletics and your sport of choice. You know, you want to pick a program that obviously has a great reputation, is successful. You want to make sure that the coach is interested in you. There's a need for you, and whatever your position or status may be on a team, or whatever you're looking to participate in, you want to make sure that there's some interest there on the coach's side of things. I'll tell you this. I get a lot of emails, and a lot of prospective students tell me they email and call, and they don't get a lot of response. And I said, well, that's probably a hint that you need to take, right? I mean, for me, if I'm interested in a prospective student and they're interested in Bates, there's going to be some back and forth communication, just like Coach Ryder talked about. I mean, that's got to happen in order for this to become a reality. So think about contact, think about communication, and think about those three things that I mentioned when choosing your school.
Dani, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add, I really like how Coach Martin kind of had that checklist. And one that I'll just add that we talked to our prospects a lot about is, on top of the three that he mentioned, is make sure that the college as a whole is a good social fit for you. You're going to meet incredible people on your team. You're going to meet incredible people in your classroom, in the groups you join. And so you want to get a sense for that social fit beyond athletics, academics, and the location. And maybe the student athletes can talk a little bit about that, what Bates is like and what type of people they've experienced at Bates, because I think it's truly a unique college. And it's, if I had to say my selling point for Bates, it's the people. And you might hear that a lot when you come to campus or when you join one of these conversations, but it's so true. It really is an amazing group of people.
Yeah, I can definitely talk a little bit about that too. Like, I think for me, my first year being on a team and getting to meet the people around me who were, I think, just so invested in what they were doing, not only rowing, but then all of the other things. I remember like sitting my first year in the dining hall for like 2 hours with one of the seniors, and he just talked to me about his thesis, and he was so passionate about what he was doing and then what he was learning. And I think that's been the most special part about being on this team and being a Bates student, is getting to be surrounded by people who are really excited to kind of do things every day, be on a team, compete, and also learn things every day, and get to work in the community and do all sorts of different things. So I think in like a quick snapshot of how to describe like a Bates student, I think it would be like someone who's really, really invested in working hard and learning things.
Yeah, on top of what Aidan said, I would add that Bates wants to educate you as a whole person. I think that's something you'll hear, and it's also in the culture within the students to make you branch out into other groups. So when you're at Bates, if you're a student, you're also an athlete, you're also whatever those other interests that you have are. So those clubs that you're interested in. And I remember one of the seniors on the team my first year, they were saying, hey, we have a great close family right here, and we're going to be here for each other, but we want to encourage you to branch out and make sure that you're exploring those other areas, and search for friendships off the team as well, because there's so much here to offer. And Bates encourages you to expand all of your experiences.
Great, that's a wonderful segue into one of our first student questions. So Miriam asks if there's a social divide between athletes and non-athletes at Bates. So you're in that headspace already, Christopher. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, for sure. So at Bates, I think it's like 40% are varsity athletes, and then up to like 70% will be involved in club or intramural sports. So you have a lot of athletes on campus, but then there's obviously a ton of other clubs and other groups to be a part of. So you have athletes within all these other groups. So there's certainly not a divide. Wherever you go on campus, you're definitely going to be mingling with students that are and aren't athletes. I don't think that being an athlete, puts you in a certain specific pinhole. Yeah, so in short, there's definitely not like a strict divide or anything. People branch out and mingle beyond that. Aidan, I don't know if you wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with everything you said. And I think also it goes back to kind of with people being so involved in different things that like, it's not like being kind of an athlete on campus is never like something specifically that someone usually is, someone who does athletics and then usually a lot of other things too. So you get to meet so many different people, both on your team and then, in all of the classes you're in, all the extra things you do, you get to meet certain people. So I think there isn't necessarily like a divide ever, which I think is pretty cool. And I think generally too, everyone kind of supports athletics on campus too. Like all of the like games and things like that are all really well attended by all sorts of different people. So I think we're all pretty supportive of each other too. So.
And we're so excited to go to whatever the next contest is at Bates. Like, I can't wait to go see some sports somewhere at Bates soon. So Nick asked the next question, and I think maybe this is a good one for one of our coaches, about any restrictions in terms of practices, when coaches can have contact with athletes, D3 regulations, NCAA regulations, NESCAC regulations. How and when do students practice?
I'll take that, and then I'll let Coach Martin join in. So in the off season, I think there's a difference between athletic related activity and then non. So the athletic related activity is restricted in the NESCAC specifically, not D3 as a whole. And so it's really limited what we can do in terms of like actual sport specific training. Our student athletes are still able to lift and work with the strength and conditioning coaches in different, they can work with them in different ways. So that's a really consistent part of their training throughout the year. I'd say that's the most year-round part of your training is your strength and conditioning in the weight room. Outside of that, it's really team to team and how that coach approaches that off season, whether they give a packet, a training packet that would be similar to what you would get in the summer. Sometimes some teams will get together and maybe play some pickup together, but it's not your traditional organized practice with a coach that you're used to in the fall. Outside of that, I think it's really important to know that your team and your coach is still there for you. So even though we can't pick up our sticks in the off season, our team gets together in other ways. We actually have a book club in the off season, so totally not athletic related, but a really fun way for us to get together, meet in the Den, which is a really cool space on campus. It's like a little cafe, and read a book and just spend some time with each other and keep our connection close. So you'll still see your coach out of season. It's just not going to maybe be on the field, but it will be a part of your life and your experience year round. So if you like to have that structure, you don't want to have that gap between seasons, it's certainly still there.
I agree with Coach. What's interesting is I've worked at obviously non-NESCAC institutions, and it's funny how in the non-traditional season or the off season, how busy we are, even though we don't have a scheduled non-traditional NCAA season in the NESCAC. And it's really interesting to me to see how I can develop leadership in my team and accountability. We do a lot of team building. We do a lot of goal setting in the off season for the upcoming season. And we also are pretty active in the community in the off season with community service projects. We do a lot in the local Lewiston, Auburn area. And maybe even some, a little further away. But it's funny how even though you don't have, and for baseball, it's a 4-week 16. The NCAA will let you have 4 weeks, 16 total practices in the non-traditional season. And we don't have that schedule, but we still stay really active as a team while contributing to the community and also working on some leadership and goal setting skills and still trying to get ready for the season ahead. And if you look at NESCAC sports and a lot of Bates sports, it doesn't seem to inhibit us at all. I mean, most of these teams are very strong in a national level, obviously. And so it's really interesting to see how we can overcome that.
Great. Thank you both. And my husband is the Bates strength coach. So if you end up at Bates in the off season in particular, you'll be spending some quality time with my better half. So this transitions nicely into Maggie's question, and maybe Aidan, if you want to tackle this one first. But in season, so we talked about off season or out of season training, connection, etc. What does in season look like? How do you manage that? How do you balance it? Another question from Jeremy is how kind of forgiving or permissive are professors when it comes to conflicts with your academic work? So that was a lot, but Aidan, do you want to tackle it first?
Yeah, definitely. So, every team's practice schedule is a little different. For rowing, we practice 8 times a week. So we have 2 days where we do double sessions, and then we'll in the afternoon most other days. And then, so, kind of balance that. All the other things I do on campus too is I mean, it's not the easiest thing, but I think it's so, you know, one thing I remember someone saying is it's going to be difficult, but it's so doable and it's so rewarding at the end of the day. And I have found that to be really true. It's, you know, it's definitely takes a little bit of getting used to, but then once you get into the schedule of, you know, knowing when you have practice and then kind of building your day kind of around that and then classes as well, it really kind of becomes second nature to at a certain point. And then, so I think that the challenge is certainly, you know, getting off into that routine and then setting good habits as a student. But then hopefully, you know, I remember kind of coming from a pretty similar schedule in high school. So it just felt kind of really similar to me. And it's been good to stay busy, honestly. It's been always nice. And then kind of balancing that with academics too. Professors are really, really understanding too about athletics, and as long as you give them a really good or some advance notice as to if you're going to miss a class or things like that for athletic events, they're usually really, really okay with it. And one really good example I have was I had to take a final and I had to miss or reschedule it because we had one of our first races in the spring season, because our races are always like during final season. So I kind of went to the professor a few weeks beforehand and explained my situation. And then we have every team gets a professor who's assigned to their team to kind of help be that bridge between athletics and academics. So they worked with that professor for the rowing team and then scheduled a time for me to take the exam in his office. So it was really, really helpful. So they're really understanding about all aspects of a student's life. I don't know if Christopher, if you want to add anything else onto that too.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely covered like a lot of what I would have said. I definitely know that all my professors, you know, have worked with me for any kind of small conflict, and like they're there to help you as much as they can. Obviously, you know, being a scholar athlete, scholar comes first, your academics do come first. But, you know, you're going to be trying to make everything work together as well as you can. And I think that your reference to high school was a pretty good one because, you know, it's not drastically different from that. You're putting in the time in both subjects, and a lot of that, besides like practice time, there might be other little pieces. I know for running, you know, getting in extra miles can come in individually, and, you know, finding that time by yourself. And so there's a lot of like, self-driven aspect that I see in a lot of athletes on campus. So there's that. But yeah, and also just in terms of the difficulty of it, you have that time to be academic and using your mind a lot during the day, during your classes, you know, doing your homework between classes. And then when it comes time for practice, you get to, you know, relieve that mind, the pressure off your mind, and you get to just have that physical release and get to socialize with your team, be in that setting. And so that duality honestly like drives me in both ways. And I think that without one or the other, I wouldn't be as successful with each one. So yeah.
Great, thank you both. So Holly asks about Bates SAT optional policy and if that includes athletes, and I want to assure you that yes, it does. Absolutely, Bates is test optional for all of our applicants. So Bates has been test optional since 1984. We have not required ACT, SAT, or SAT subject tests, and that is true for all students, regardless of what you want to participate in at Bates, what you want to major in at Bates. Don't let anybody tell you different. But that might transition really well. Coach Martin, if you want to talk maybe about the pre-read process, because I think that's probably something that either some of our students are in right now or experiencing or have heard about. What is the pre-read process?
Sure. So I can give my process and kind of my timeline with how I work with my recruits, and Coach Ryder may want to chip in here with hers, because even though we have the same admissions deadlines with Bates, sports work on different timelines with how they recruit. So that's always good to know. So for baseball, the summer is big, and it's almost crushing this summer that I can't get out and sit in the sun all day and watch baseball. But I've been doing a lot of virtual baseball, a lot of video, so that's the best I can do right now. Not quite the real thing. But so what we do is I would say let's start back to the beginning of the year in January, right? So in January, as the year turns, we start to really get our database in order and get our list organized and schedule the events that we're going to travel to and during the summer, and schedule certain student athletes that we know we need to be in constant communication with. As that timeline progresses into the spring, we start to really get a better picture of who academically is going to fit the profile that we're looking for, especially as they start to finish up their junior year and they start to take their ACT and SAT. And once we get into that and we start to get final transcripts for the junior year and academic information, we'll put all this together and communicate this with admissions. And as this starts to happen, we can't really have much communication as far as feedback of whether this student is someone we should keep on our radar or not until after July or July 1, I believe. So, and that's a NESCAC policy there. So once July 1 comes around, we will start to communicate with admissions through our process and get an idea of who's on our radar and academically and who's not. Obviously, the talent level is something that has to be evaluated also. And once the two roads start to come together and we feel that as far as the overall talent of the prospective student athlete is there and the academic fit is the right one, we'll set up visits to campus. Obviously, with the COVID restrictions right now, that's not happening, but this is in a normal academic year. So throughout the fall, we'll have academic or overnight visits or day visits to campus to get a full student experience to see what you think. And then we'll start the conversation to really narrow it down if Bates is the right fit for you. I'll be honest with you to say that we do this with quite a few student athletes throughout the summer and the fall. And, because we have to fill certain spots on our rosters that we know when the year comes to an end that we have to have nailed down. So by November, we have our early decision deadline. And then by January 1, we have our ED2 and our regular decision deadline. So you can see how from January to January, I mean, it fills up an entire calendar year. And that's specifically for baseball. I don't know if Coach Ryder wants to share kind of her timeline. I know that the summer is big for everybody, but everybody kind of works on how they evaluate their students. So go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, so I think because we're a fall sport, it's a little different. We're sped up a little bit compared maybe to our spring counterparts. So our narrowing down process really starts in the fall of your junior year. And really the winter months, December, January, February, are kind of our last looks at prospects in their junior year. And we are narrowing down our class pretty significantly from February through that July 1st early read. So we do our day-long visits in your junior year, the spring of your junior year. And the reason that we do that is because by the fall of your senior year, we've already really solidified who's applying ED1 with the intention to hopefully join our team. So we're really narrowing down, I think, a season ahead of maybe our spring sports. So in that spring of your junior year, we're bringing you to campus. Usually didn't happen this year with COVID as much as we would have liked, but we're bringing you to campus. We're having you meet with faculty. We're having you get lunch with our team. We've probably met with you a ton of times up before that point, whether it was on the phone, what used to be like Skype and FaceTime and is now Zoom, and a bunch of other ways, so that when July 1st rolls around, that's really just like our last checkpoint for that next class to make sure that you're a good fit academically for our program. So our class is usually solidified by late July, early August. So a little bit quicker, but that's probably just because our fall, we're busy, we're in season, we don't have time to recruit. We don't have time to meet with you. So we're just that semester, I think, earlier from what Coach Martin explained.
Great, thanks. So maybe a couple definitions. NESCAC, we're making some assumptions that everyone on the call knows what that is, but I tell you, it took me a full season at Bates before I knew what the NESCAC was, and I was a recruited athlete. So the New England Small College Athletic Conference is just that. It's an athletic conference with similar size schools to Bates. So schools that you've heard of, many of you might know this already, but in Maine, Bowdoin and Colby, we have Middlebury, there we go, I was gonna say Colorado College, Connecticut College, Wesleyan, Tufts, Williams, Amherst, and Hamilton. Who am I missing? Trinity in Connecticut. So 11 colleges that make up our conference. And the NESCAC has some parameters in terms of when we can compete, how we can compete, if there are playoffs, what they look like. And they have some kind of parameters around the whole admission process and how it relates to recruitment. And that's this pre-read process allows our coaches and admissions to talk. So Coach Ryder and I have a lot of back and forth about her lists. And we talk about kind of our admission process, where her recruits are looking and how that lines up, and give some kind of honest feedback that helps inform who she can support through the process. So hopefully that's a helpful definition. It's the mechanics of it, but important to understand, and I'm sure your parents are curious about that whole idea as well. So if there are more admission related questions, we're happy to answer those. But Sarah asks specifically for Christopher about running track. Is there also pressure to run cross country if you're a track athlete? And maybe more broadly to the group, talk a little bit about being a multi-sport athlete, or if you've had multi-sport colleagues or players.
Before I go on to the multi-sport, I think Dani might have wanted to comment on that admissions process.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to comment on Jeremy, your question about not panicking. So I truly mean that. I think when Coach Martin and I are speaking, we're speaking in general terms, but so just for an example, one of my rising seniors who's going to be a captain, I met the summer between her junior and senior year. So coaches are certainly trying to fill out their classes in that summer between your junior and senior year. But at the same time, I'm always open, and maybe this is coach to coach, but I'm always open if somebody new pops on my radar to get to know them before I say we're full or to dismiss them. So if you're rising into your senior year and you haven't made contact, certainly do so. I encourage you to definitely get on that. You don't want too much time to pass, but the door is probably still open and might just be a faster process for you than it would have been if you had started it a year before.
Yeah, and just a reminder, like I didn't reach out until like that fall before I was applying. But about the multi-sport athletes, so yeah, cross country, all the cross country athletes do track and field, and there's only a handful that, I mean, I have one of my friends does Nordic skiing in the winter, so he will go cross country, Nordic, and then try to join us for outdoor track. But if you're just trying to do track and field, the coach does encourage you to do cross country. That's what my sister did. She used to play soccer, but was, moving on past that. And so when she said, I want to do track and field, the coach said, great, let's do indoor and outdoor and join us for cross country. If you have another sport that you try to do in the fall, then you could also do that instead of cross country. It really is up to that conversation with the coach. But typically for track, if you're in the mid-distance or distance groups, it involves cross-country as well.
Great, thanks. Aidan, this next question is specifically about rowing. It comes from Wendy. Can you talk a little bit about the walk-on process? And maybe this will be the point to brag a little bit about the rowing program success.
Yeah, I think absolutely, definitely. We really, I was technically a walk-on. Walk-ons make up about a third of our team. So we don't cut anyone on the rowing team because I think we've kind of always been under the philosophy that if you want to kind of do all of our practices and kind of go as hard at it and love you, which I think has made our program really successful over the years. You know, we've gotten to compete on the men's side at the D1 kind of level, which has been really amazing and really cool. Our women's rowing team has been extremely successful. They have the NCAA champions for the past, I want to say 3 years, I think. So they are absolutely amazing. And I think a big part of this team is being able to have people who get to start rowing at the college level. And I think one thing that is really, really amazing about being a walk-on, especially at Bates, is that we do technically have a really specific way of kind of rowing, and then our kind of rowing style is a little bit unique to the college. So having someone who come in with kind of like a blank slate, just willing to learn, is absolutely highly encouraged, because kind of we all go through the first few weeks kind of retraining ourselves how to do the rowing stroke at Bates. So it's a great time to pick up a new sport, and we would love to have you on the rowing team. So.
Great. So Maggie has another question for us. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of the culture of athletics on campus, kind of school spirit? Anyone is happy to or willing to jump in, go for it.
Yeah, so I've answered this question a little bit before with admissions, and I like to say that, you know, we're not this big hoorah D1 state school with a stadium that's filled up, but we do have Garcelon Field right in the middle of campus, right next to the one dining hall. And so if there's, you know, a soccer game under the lights in the evening and you're walking to the library, but, you know, you have a few minutes to spare, students like to stop by and watch the game. And there's usually a good handful of students there watching the games. Definitely, you know, varies on your time commitment, but there's also a spirit of school culture in the way that, you know, we're not it's not just cheering on our sports teams, it's kind of cheering on Bates as students, and we love supporting each other. And I think that students are just really proud of the culture that's cultivated at Bates, that's so collaborative and has such this warm community welcome. So I think that the school spirit goes beyond athletics and really roots in what it means to be a Bobcat.
I'll add to that. Coming from 4 years ago, coming from a different institution to take this position at Bates, I was pleasantly surprised with the amount of support from students to students. Like Christopher just said, it's really a true, genuine thing at Bates. And I think no matter what team is competing or what performance is happening, I mean, I know that personally I've gone to see players of mine in a cappella performances and things like that. And my entire team, if they were available, would go to that. So it's really impressive to see the support, I think, from students to students, faculty and staff to students. On the playing field, though, or on the court, it's a great atmosphere for college athletics. I mean, the NESCAC this is a highly competitive Division III conference, and a lot of these students come from far and wide to compete at all of these institutions, especially Bates. And I think that the college athletics and just sports atmosphere at all of these schools is incredible. And as Christopher just said, you know, Garcelon Field, you know, last year we had a rival football game under the lights on a Saturday night, and I mean, it was electric. It was unbelievable. And that's the kind of stuff that's what the college experience is. That's what you want. You know, you want to support each other, and you want energy and fun and pride and tradition. And I think that the athletic experience at Bates has all of that and then some, for sure.
Yeah, I'll just build off of that. I was an assistant at Division I school not long before I made my way to Bates, and I think our fan base here is like far exceeds what we had there. It really is really fun. to coach at Bates. We have huge crowds. I think like for field hockey, we have huge crowds, which is really cool. And it is a lot of fun just to see other students come to our games. Faculty will come to our games. Our parents are wildly supportive. They come to a ton of games. So it really is a great atmosphere to play in. And one thing that's really unique about the NESCAC is, especially with the fall sports, is we all compete against the same school at the same time. So when field hockey is playing Bowdoin, soccer is playing Bowdoin, volleyball's probably playing Bowdoin, or at least another NESCAC. So it's this really cool atmosphere where like every team is going out to beat Bowdoin that day, or every team's going out to beat Middlebury that day. And that's a lot of fun too, because I know like our team, as soon as our game's over, we get out our phone and we're like, okay, who won? What's the score? And so it really is an atmosphere where we all really want each other to succeed, and we're cheering each other on.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that's been said so far. I think getting to compete at this school has been really cool. We only get one opportunity as like a home game, and it's right in the middle of spring break in April usually. So it's usually like there aren't a lot of people around, but every year our one home race is like people will come back early from break just to watch us compete. Like professors will all come out from their like week off to come see us. All the other spring sports that are around, usually if they're free, will sometimes stop by. So it is really a lot of support from everyone. And that's, I think, just makes it so much more special to get to compete for Bates, because, you know, everyone on campus is rooting for you. And I think the same goes, like, definitely rooting for all the other Bates teams too. Every time, like you said, kind of every time there's a game, we're always, even if we're traveling, like, watching live or trying to do one of the live streams as much as we can. So I think it is pretty cool to get that feeling of knowing that the whole student body is kind of supporting you, and professors and faculty.
That's awesome. Thank you guys. Again, I'm like so anxious and excited for the next Bobcast, the next Bates contest I can see. So if folks are wanting to get more of the flavor of an athletic contest or the culture of sports at Bates, the Bobcast, which I inadvertently just said, is a great resource. We have our assistant sports information director. His name is Aaron Morris. He produces this really fun little podcast, mostly weekly, which highlights success in the classroom and on the field for Bates athletes. And he's been doing some fun alumni interviews recently too. So if you're looking for kind of more of like, what is this place all about? He does a good job of capturing the spirit of athletics at Bates. I'm gonna ask another question. Again, I made Aidan brag a little bit about the success of the rowing program, but each of your programs have had success. So do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the culture of your teams, or how you foster winning in balance with all the other things that Bates students are expected to do?
I'll start again. I think my first year at Bates, the seniors at that time had this dream of going to this race. It's called the IRAs, which is essentially all of the top men's rowing programs go and compete. It's the top usually like 16 or 17. And we had been really, really close to get to go the past few years. And then that kind of group of people really had this like dream to get there. And that year we were really fortunate enough to get to go and compete and have a really successful showing there, which was pretty cool. But I think it kind of came down to, it wasn't really necessarily like our coach's dream to do that. It really kind of stemmed from like all of us as a team collectively having that goal and really working hard together to push each other and support each other also kind of through that process to kind of get there. And it was pretty cool to get to do that. So I think that's kind of a lot of the motivation came just kind of from within each other, and that's where the drive kind of started.
Yeah, I'll share. So field hockey is in the NESCAC is really highly competitive. So in 2019, I think 8 of the 11 programs were ranked in the national top 20 poll. Bates was one of those, woohoo, as high as 13. So it's really a competitive conference. And so there's automatically that drive to win. I think with any student athlete who's looking to compete in the NESCAC is you're looking for that high caliber athletic experience under the D3 philosophy. So we're automatically bringing in student athletes who have that edge to them. But I think as a team personally, we set our drive to win based on, we have some team values that have been a work in progress over my 7 years at Bates, and really were solidified last year. We kind of edited each year, and last year we were like, aha, that's it. And it's something that our team is really proud about, and we structure everything we do around these team values. And because I think we always have that as our grounding point and our foundation, it drives our success and kind of how we set our goals for each season and what we want to accomplish. But when you choose to play at a school like Bates, you're really choosing to not have to give up too much. You can have this elite level athletic experience with the highest level academic caliber experience. And so you really are getting like this amazing combination of both worlds. And so naturally the type of student who's going to look for that experience, I think is competitive and has grit and has drive.
Yeah, and I'll add on to this with the cross country and track teams. The men's cross country team, we've made it to the NCAA championships these past 2 years, and that's kind of always, been the goal for our team, is trying to make it to that championship where there's the top 30 teams across the country comes compete. And the conversations has actually been really shifted from our coach saying, we've proved that we can make it. Now our goal is, always to improve. So what's our new goal? What do we want to do? Where do we want to place at NCAA championship? And so there's always this push to, be the best that we can be. And I mean, throughout the season, there's also other smaller championships like the NESCAC championship. We have a state of Maine meet that the team has won a couple of times, which is always a blast. So there's a lot of fun involved with these championships for sure. But also the student athlete experience, I think, is so important. And so there's a lot of success on the team, but also not just within the sport, but also academically. I know that our team has seen like a handful of students go off to do Fulbrights, and that's something really special to see upperclassmen do, especially, being in your first year, saying, hey, like they were a crazy good athlete on our team, and I looked up so much to them, but look at what they did off the team as well with their academics. And so that's really inspiring and really encourages you to push yourself in both regards.
That's awesome. Thank you. So we have just a few moments left. I don't see any open questions. So I'm just going to ask the panelists if you want to impart one piece of unsolicited advice to our participants here who are in an exciting yet vulnerable position as they are looking into colleges and trying to figure out what's the best fit and where am I going to contribute, who's going to support me. What one piece of advice would you give them at this point?
I'll start. Just one piece is tough because I tend to lump several into one. But I would say that one piece of advice is be thorough with your communication to whoever you're in contact with, whether it's an admissions representative at a certain school or Bates or a coach. Anybody that would have some sort of an influence in you making a decision on where you want to go to college. Definitely communicate, reply to text, reply to emails. You need to check email every day. It's part of it, and it's important because there are deadlines and deadlines need to be met. So I'd say communication is probably my biggest piece of advice.
My biggest advice for you will be, I think you should share as much as you can about who you are and avoid kind of holding your cards closely at times, because you want your coach to know, your future coach to know, your future teammates to know who you are, because you want to receive that back to them. And the more you're willing to share and really get to know your potential team and really share who you are, I think the better of a fit you're going to find for your college experience. So put yourself out there. It can be really scary, but put yourself out there, put a lot in emails, make those phone calls, and really make sure that you paint a picture of who you are, because that's, I think, what's going to get you recruited ultimately, is if you're a good fit all around for a school and for a program.
I think my advice would definitely be kind of like just doing a lot of research as far as schools, like knowing that every school is going to be a little different and have different things to offer. And I think knowing that there is a good fit out there, no matter what you're looking for. So I think just making sure you're looking at all aspects, not just, outside of athletics too, whether they have the right kind of department you're interested in doing, all the extracurriculars you are also interested in doing too, is making sure you're looking at all of those things too.
I think everyone took my pieces of advice. Reaching out. And, with COVID, it might be tricky, but ask the coach if they can put you in contact with one of their captains. I think that when you have these communications with coaches, and you'll learn a lot about what they promote on their team. And I think that finding a culture that works for you is going to be really important, because that's 4 years that you're, committing to. And I think that making sure that it's the whole school that's going to support you and not just the athletic experience is really important. So considering all elements.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us for this fun, informative conversation. There will be a survey that comes into your email within the next 4 to 6 hours, probably. So if you want to give us some feedback or you have more questions, Nicole and I will see those and respond to you. We can put you in touch with other students or other coaches or faculty or folks on campus. I want to thank Christopher and Aidan and Dani and John for joining us and sharing their words of wisdom and thoughts, and Nicole for keeping us organized and running. There are so many more ways to get to know Bates, even if you can't visit campus. So we encourage you to explore the website, take advantage of the students and staff in the admission office who are just sitting around waiting for you to ask us questions. We have a series of tours, interviews, information sessions, and more panels coming up later in August as well. So please stay tuned. Again, as Coach Martin says, check your email. We'll be sending you invites to more things. But we want to thank you and wish you well and have a great weekend.